Welcome to the Andy Noise Experience podcast, Endurance Noise, Random Musing. It's Wednesday, August 5th. And who do I have here on Zoom?
Ray Berlanga.
Yes. And where are you? Where do you
I'm
live?
in Anaheim Hills, California.
Okay. And obviously at your house then?
Yes, I'm home
Yeah. And
after,
how's
after a long day of work.
yes, I remember talking to you about work, and we'll probably get into that. One of the reasons, I like talking to everybody, but you definitely are doing the whole work, dad, all that kind of stuff that so many people out there are doing. It seems like you when I last talked to you quite a ways ago, we kind of meet up about once a year. You kind of do one race a year, the Beyond Limits Ultra. So we have like an annual, like, hey, what's going on? And then the
Yeah.
thing is, we're not really ever really on the same page. You kind of fly around during the day, and then sometime at night we might passing ships. So it's kind of I remember it used to be in like apartment complex, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like you're in an apartment now, or it's a really nice
I'm
apartment.
I'm at my parents'.
Okay.
My wife and I, we moved over here saving up so we could get a place of our own, because as you know how expensive it is to live in Southern California. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So
Well, that's why I'm in Bakersfield. It's a lot cheaper. Yeah, no, it's just I remember you were a superintendent kind of the apartments and stuff like that, right? Wasn't that?
Well, yeah, kind of. I was a maintenance manager, and now I'm like a maintenance technician for a different company. But now I'm in a roving position, and I like it because I've been able to expand my maintenance knowledge. I'm doing everything from plumbing and electrical to full on like remodels. Like I'm completely like gutting things all the way to the stud and just running everything. So it's been really fun and educational, I guess, in that kind of way of expanding my maintenance knowledge.
Oh, it's so nice. I mean, I cannot fix, repair, or do anything. And even when I was a kid, I would destroy skateboards, bicycles, and just and then I've got three egghead sons. They've got a degree in political science, history, and I don't know what the youngest one's doing. And I often say, I really wish I had a mechanic, a plumber, an electrician. It'd be way better off. They would have guaranteed income, and they could help me fix stuff because I'm constantly having to get people to do it. So, I'm all about, I'm like, God, I wish I had those. In fact, it's kind of funny. I've talked on a podcast about how because I can't fix real things like you're doing, like, hey, this is broke, come get it. I'm really good at internet stuff because I don't have an attention to detail. And don't worry, the kid's there, it's great. My dog comes in, my kids, yeah. And so what happens is I don't have an attention to detail, or like, and so I constantly, oh, this doesn't work, I'll try something else. But on the internet, that works really good, because if the program doesn't work, you just turn the computer off or reboot it or stuff like that. And so my ADD helps me when I'm fixing things you can't break. But like when I'm trying to, like you fixing an AC unit, there's only one way to fix it. Well, a few ways, but if you do something, you can break it and cost thousands of dollars. So you fit that in. I see you've got one kid. How many kids do you have?
I have two girls.
Yep, two girls.
I've got 6 and a 12-year-old.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and I'm sure this whole COVID thing has been kind of crazy with them home and.
Yes, absolutely. More so for my wife, because she's been
Yeah.
doing the majority of the teaching, because I still working, because I have like you still need plumbers and
Yes.
electricians and all those fields. So I haven't stopped. They sent us home for a few weeks because at first they're like, we don't know what to do. So everyone go home. And
Yeah.
then everyone started using like paper towels to flush their toilets, and then they're like, actually, we need everyone to come back to work because we have tons of clogged toilets. Then I like electrical is my favorite as far as the different things that I'll do. And you have kids hanging from ceiling fans because they probably watched a movie and realized, hey, this isn't load bearing. I
Well,
can't hold on to this.
I
I
wish
can't hold
I
it.
wish you were here in Bakersfield, because I can look up and see a ceiling fan in my room, which hasn't worked in a decade.
Oh yeah.
And it would be nice to have working right now, because like I said, it was kind of warm. Yeah, so that's kind of and so you're in Anaheim Hills, and I've seen your postings on Instagram, and I'm like, boy, he's running kind of like some trails, and it looks really nice, and it looks cool, and so that obviously is a benefit of where you're living, and you're
Mhm.
up to almost 2 years straight of going out every day too. I see.
Yeah, I'm starting to close that gap on the 2 year
Hmm.
the 2 year mark, and that was just hard. Like it's some days it's like it's even because like my minimum is like a mile, but like a
Okay.
long day of work, you're tired, you're sick, whatever it was, like you know, I I that seems impossible some days, even for your minimum, you know. But it's one of the things I did differently in strategizing was uh, is like really just making that habit of multiple alarms, and then it just became easier. Like of just getting up every day, then you don't
Oh,
need the alarms as much. You just get up, you
yeah.
know.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you are doing it in the morning. That's a good thing.
Majority of the time during the week. On the weekends, I'll let myself sleep in because I feel like I'm so depleted of sleep through the week
Hmm.
that I'm like, you know what, even if it's hotter and I get out a little later, I know my body needs that, you know, some extra hours of sleep because I know like that's also important for recovery, you know, making sure that we get enough sleep. And so I definitely know, you know, I think more when my body needs it, especially like on the weekend, if I catch myself having a nap, I kind of reflect. I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize I was that tired. If I end up taking a nap because I'm not a nap person. Yeah.
I'm a big time napper. Um, I love what you're saying because you're kind of going hand in hand with what I've been preaching and talking about for quite some time. And what I really like about endurance Twitter is I just follow on some things. I follow too many people. I can't keep track. But on my Twitter page, I really try and only focus on following coaches and very few athletes, just trying to follow more of the science and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
it's interesting. A lot of them have been coming out with the whole thing like motivation is worthless. Motivation disappears. What you talked about, routine is the way to get it. And so and I tell people
absolutely.
all the time, you just got to set up routine and you get up and this is what you do. This is just
Yeah,
part of you get up and clog the toilet and the porcelain punisher, but you
right.
go out. That's what Adam Carolla calls it, his friend, the porcelain punisher. And that's the thing.
Yeah,
And I got my wife, I've been married now 30 years. For 27 years, she would not pay attention to what I was saying, and it was like, people pay me to coach him and you don't want to listen to me. And then finally she got to a point where she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we go out every morning because she used to be like, okay, I'm gonna work out on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Da, 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 da. I said, no, just go out every day. And if we miss a day, then no big deal. And she dropped a bunch of weight and has gotten healthy and can now sometimes out walk me in the mornings just because we'll do 17, 18-minute miles, which is pretty quick. So yeah, so
that
what
is
you're
good.
talking about, getting into that routine, and then of course they always are talking about sleep. They always say, if sleep was a performance enhancing drug, which it is, you could sell it on, you can make a lot of money selling sleep. Like if it's on the counter, like, hey, buy some sleep, and
For
because
sure.
yeah, because
What's your strategy in that? Because I always feel like that's like one of my big struggles. One is not getting like I feel like I never get enough. Like I could always get more. But then so that's like through the week, like as far as just like I would be nice if I got more sleep. But then like the completely opposite is like now race day. Like what is the strategy on race day? Because obviously that's also a big thing. It's like now we're doing the opposite. We needed more sleep during training. Now race day, now I'm depleting my body of sleep. I need sleep.
yeah.
And now how do I flip the switch and keep on going? I don't know. What do you think that is? Because I know you've experimented and I
Yeah.
know you've experimented and it's gone bad too. So
Yeah. Well, the thing is, unfortunately, you, like so many people, have a lot going on. You're younger than me. You've got kids, you've got work, da 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 da, and so you always are not taking care of your sleep maintenance, and so you're always behind the ball, and especially when the weekend comes. And so the problem is, if you want to do well in races, you got to be really consistent with that sleep. And so you are going into you and so many others are always kind of sleep deprived. you're always cheating on this end or the other end. Now I would say, it's more like, I think I tell people, you got to have more consistent when you're going to go to bedtime and stop like watching Netflix and things like
Yeah.
that. Like, I mean,
Yes.
hit the bed at 9 o'clock and, or go to bed when your kids are going to bed. That's the problem. But,
Mhm.
there's so much in the day. So what happens is you're always kind of never got that sleep. So then when you go into a race, you're already going in not fully charged up. You're at a point where you're just, and like I tell people, I'm really good usually at races staying awake, but also I'm taking care of myself throughout the year, all the time. And it's kind of like, well, I'm sure you found with running every day for the past 2 years, the running's getting better and easier because you're just doing it. You got a routine and you're building that up. And the problem is, and the same thing is with sleep. You're not logging enough sleep. You can try and cram, like so many people don't train and then jump into a marathon and go, oh, I was going good till mile 15 and then the wheels fell off. And so that's kind of taking that. I too, though, I only sleep maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. And that's even with
Okay.
and I love it. I got the Fitbit, and the Fitbit's really great. I don't know if you wear one of those, but it's great for tracking stuff like that.
Okay.
And I highly recommend getting one of these nowadays. You can get them for like, $100 or less. And they do a really good job. So you can kind of see what you're actually, and that's the same thing with like when people with training, I tell people, everybody goes, oh, all these gizmos and stuff. But I said, well, it's because your memory is terrible. So you're like, oh yeah, I think I'm doing 40 miles a week when you really aren't. But if you got a Strava, you're like, oh, same thing with sleep. Like, oh, I think I'm sleeping
Right.
this and that. But you put one of these, I've got the Fitbit, it's got like
Okay.
a week long battery life, and it's black and white. Now myself and my dad was the same way. He seemed to get away with 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And then of course I now take naps. In fact, I just took one a little while ago. I'll take like a 10-20 minute naps. So when I go into a race though, I'm going in fully charged. And then since I have a natural ability to not have to sleep, and I used to think like, what, everybody when they're doing 24-hour races, 100-mile races, I often like going, everybody has so much difficulty staying awake, and I'm always like, why is this hard? And so I didn't realize that most normal people have to go to bed.
Right.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
you're just normal, and I was like, oh, now like I always tell people in a race I can stay awake for 24, 30, 37 hours and or 40 hours and be fine, or even when I'm crewing and pacing, but you put me in like the nicest suite in Vegas and give me everything I want, I'd be asleep by 9 o'clock at night. I couldn't stay awake all night in Vegas, even with fun going on. Yeah. So
It's some people are so talented at falling asleep really easy. I remember working the aid station over at Nanny Goat,
mhm.
and so I was there with my daughter, and Ed's like, "Hey, can you come over in 20 minutes
Yeah.
and like wake me up?" And like, no joke. And then it was funny because like on Joe Rogan when he interviewed like Courtney Dewater, and she's
Yeah.
like talking about her cat naps. I'm like, Ed's been doing that for years.
Yes.
Like that's nothing new. I'm like, man, I mean, he'd be out like really
Yeah.
quick, and so that would kind of like blow my mind. Like it seems like he's really, obviously I don't want to disturb him, but I mean, he looks like he's
Oh
out.
yes.
Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've
yeah.
been around it a lot, and he does. But I also tell people like and I've crewed and paced a lot, and I often give people those 5-minute naps, and it's amazing what that 5 minutes will do. And then they can go off and take off. My friend Joel, he's notorious for not being able to stay awake. And I remember we were doing San Diego 100, and I was pacing him, and at about middle of the night, he's tired. He lays down. I give him 5 minutes, and then the bad thing is woke him up. A bunch of people passed us, woke him up, and he started doing 14, 15-minute miles. I couldn't keep up with him. I should have just kept walking. But the problem is once he falls asleep, he's like a corpse that he's slept through many a thing. And it's even funny. I posted a picture of him. We were doing the San Diego 100 one year, and mile 70, I could tell he needed to sleep. So I was like, hey, you take a nap. Well, he came into mile 70 with Dean Karnassus of all
Wow.
people. And
Wow.
and they
Wow.
and they started this horrible race at 6 in the evening. So they got to
Uh-huh.
70 like at 4 in the afternoon after climbing this gigantic hill. And so I said to Joel, I said, you just need to, like a little kid, I'm like, you need to take a nap. And so we were talking to Dean, they're sitting together, and then Dean goes, Andy, look at the camera. And Dean went over like this and leaned up against Joel and pretended he was sleeping with Joel. And so we had that photo. We threw it up on Instagram, and Joel didn't know about it.
That is
So when he gets home,
awesome.
his Instagram is blown up. And so, but like, I'll like give him a 5-minute nap. And now, like, I do a lot of races by myself. And what I do is when I do like the multi-day, 48, 6-day races,
Yes.
I will walk and I'll be out there. And as long as my pace is good, like if you're doing 3 miles an hour, you're not sleepy. But when you start going, slowing down, I'll lie down, and I don't put alarms, but I'll lie down. I'll hit my timer, and if I roll over in 10 or 15 minutes, I never really fell asleep. Well, obviously I'm not tired, and I get back up and keep going. Or
And
or
that's
or I
good.
or I pass out for an hour and a half, and then I get up and then I'm rested. But either way, it's kind of like I don't, you can only, and that's why if you have a crew or pacers, just tell them, hey, give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And like, so I'll give people 5, but if they're in dead coma, I'll give them another 5, depending on where they're at in the cutoff. And then I'll make them get up. And I often tell people the problem in really, sleep is you really only want to sleep about an hour and a half at most, because that's kind of when you get your whole cycle in. And the other problem is if you sleep longer, you get kicked back into real world mode. Like if you do a three, like you do like
Yeah, yeah,
if you're at Blue and you go lay down for 4 or 5 hours, you're back
right,
home. You're not
right.
in race mode. You get 90 minutes. You shouldn't sleep more than 90 minutes or 2 hours, and then just get out and go, because you sleep 4 or
Yeah.
5, you wake up going, oh, okay. Yeah, he just takes yourself out of the race. At least that's how I feel about it. So I know you've done Blue. I've seen here that you've been doing the 72 there, and been having some
Yes,
problems.
yes.
How did
Yeah,
it?
well, I love the 72. I think that's one of my favorites. I think, well, one of my goals is to do a 200 miler, and so I think Blue is like a great place to experiment and try to
Yes.
do different things. One is my wife's never worried. She knows that I
Mhm.
know the majority of people there, and and that
Yes.
I'd be okay. Like she doesn't, it's just a loop, and everyone knows me there, so I'll be safe. And then so can I get the 200 and the 72? I would like to. I would like to see if I can push
Mhm.
myself to that point. I don't know, but I would like to go on and try to do like Bigfoot or Tahoe 200. Those like look really, really, really fun. So what do
Yeah.
I got to do to get myself there? Maybe cut back on my donuts. Maybe not as much. I do like my donuts.
The key thing is, one of the things is, people look at 100 miles, 24 hours, 100 miles, go, oh, that's 4 miles an hour. It's doable. No, it's incredibly hard, especially walking it. In fact, Yolanda and Anthony Culpepper at the Dome last summer were only the 93rd and 94th people to walk 100 miles in under 24 hours. And they've been keeping track of it since like 1870. So walking it.
Wow.
But one of the biggest things I see so many people do is doing 200 miles in 72 hours on paper looks simple. And I've been at across the years, many years, watching guys, really talented guys, try and get it and not get it or barely get it. It's difficult because of the sleep. You like it, and just the relentlessness of it. In fact, well, Brian Recor,
Yeah.
he's done Badwater and done all kinds of races.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
was I was at Across Years one year, and he caught me, and he was walking with me, and he was in the 72, and he had like 12 hours to go, and he was like, "Man, Andy, I don't know if I'm going to make it to 200." And we're walking along, and he's pretty tough as nails. And then I finally said to him, because I knew he had 12 hours left. I said, because that race ends at 9 in the morning, so it was 9 at night. It was getting dark again, and I'm like, "Well, how far do you got to go?" And he's like, 24 miles. And then he's finished Badwater, and he was like not knowing if he was going to make 24 miles in 12 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, and he was serious, and he knows I tell this story, but he was seriously like, I don't know. And I think he got to 200 and was done. And he didn't get to 200 with a whole lot of time on the clock. And so, and I see a lot of people, that's why you almost never see me run a 72, because of that pressure trying to get 200. That's 66 miles a day, man. It's rough. In fact, speaking of 72, I was at the Blue last year in the 72 stupidly, and about halfway through, I was like, okay, I'm done. I see you ran the 100 last year there.
I did, and I barely made it in by the skin of my teeth. I think I had like 9 minutes left on the
Yep,
clock.
I see
Yeah,
that.
so,
Well,
yeah. So I was definitely, I was pushing it. I was pushing it, and my brother says like, I like being the dead last in all my races, which is pretty. I'm like, not on purpose. It is like really stressful. It is like
yes,
being dead last is not fun. I
yeah,
mean,
you,
it's like it's epic, like finish, sure, like people like enjoy it, but like I mean, your body is just falling absolutely apart.
most definitely. Speaking of like when you mentioned doing 200s, doing it in 72, a lot has got to go right, and it's not. I mean, I've seen so many like really fast, really competitive guys go for it. But one of the races, if you can afford it, I've crewed and paced Tahoe 200 twice. An
Yeah, what's
amazing
the time limit on that? What's the time limit on Tahoe?
100 hours.
100 hours?
Yeah.
That seems a little bit more doable.
Yes. And the
Yeah.
Tahoe, the nice thing about the Tahoe race is it's very runnable that I can even run on it at night. And I'm pretty
Mhm.
choosy about where I run. I mean, it's the course is very doable. There's a couple hills out there that are there's one that me and Carla Kent went on, and oh my gosh, that 140 miles, it went straight up this cliff basically. But it's very doable. The aid stations are great. The aid stations are 15, 20 miles apart, so you've got to be self-sufficient, but there's plenty of time to do it. And the other part that's really nice about that race is you're not out in the middle of nowhere. So like friends or family can actually crew and pace you. And like when they go to a trailhead, they're only like 10 miles away from Tahoe. Like they can drive back to a restaurant, they can drive back to a Vaughn's. So they're not out just in the middle of the boonies like the Bigfoot one. No, it's out in the middle of God knows nowhere, and that's going to be brutal. And it's also or the Bigfoot or the Moab 240, they're
Yeah.
out really remote. Whereas the nice thing about the Tahoe is it goes around the lake, but like you could literally like go up there and get an Airbnb for your family the whole time you're doing the race, and they could stay at the Airbnb and they could get in the car and drive and see you at the aid stations they can come see you at, and it'd be wonderful. It'd be a great family vacation for them, and you could run around the lake. But I highly recommend it. If you ever do think about doing one, that's the one I would say. It's pricey, but I've done it twice with Carla Kent, who's finished Badwater 7 or 8 times, and I did it with this lady Debbie, who I didn't even know. I just put my name up as like someone to pace and crew. She's done like 5 or 6 of the tallest mountains in the world, the Seven Summits thing, and
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So, but the thing is, you can literally kind of hike if you're smart. You can hike and walk it and get it done in 100 hours. Carla had a knee injury going in, and Carla is not she's at Blue a lot. She's not a mountain runner at all. I have no idea what she did sign up for the race, and that's another reason I'm saying, being younger and so she signs up for this race, and she's terrible on trails. She can't see all that well, and I ended up pacing her for like 80 miles of the race. But long story short, we're finishing on the final day. We had great weather, and it kind of was snowing on the last day. And when we got to uh, with a mile to go, I got to say something you don't get to say to many people. I said, Carla, if you push this last mile, we could break 4 days,
Oof.
which is 96 hours.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
and so I mean, you don't get to tell people often, like, hey, if we run hard. And so she ended up running it in, 95 hours, 57 minutes, with 4 or 5 hours on the clock. But we, it's definitely a fun event. It's beautiful. It's not really super dangerous. And it's a really, have you been up the Tahoe area at all?
Just a couple of times just passing through, but I haven't stayed. Yeah.
It's
So.
it's it's definitely the place to be. And so what made you do the 100 instead of the 72 that you'd been doing there for a while, Blue? Just decided to mix it up last year?
I think it was work schedule. I think that's always like my decision, like how many vacation days do I have? Like how many, because if I don't have enough accumulated on days off, like, well, then I could probably get the time off, but then I'll be unpaid
Yeah.
time off. So it's like, how many days can I go without getting paid to go to do a race where I'm not making any money and
And
I
you're
want to do it?
and you're
It's
and
pretty
you're
hard.
paying a lot and stuff like that. But
Right.
the good thing is, you're an age, you're younger and you've got the kids. And so what's really great, and I really enjoy seeing you on Instagram, is you're doing something that almost no runners do, which is train. Most people just run, race, recover, run, race, recover. I often joke that my wife, who walks every morning, she puts in more miles than a lot of ultra marathoners do in a week.
I believe it.
She
I
puts
believe
it,
it.
she only walks 20, 30 miles, 20, 25 miles a week, but so many people just run a lot of marathons. And, it's kind of like, must be nice to have that big checkbook so you can run all these races, but it's definitely not good. Almost like it's better off kind of like you having a job and limited resources than you're not at least bearing yourself and running so many damn races and kind of can pick and choose. And your brother now, because
Yeah,
I,
Rocky.
yeah, no. So Bill Simmons is another guy I love, The Ringer. Have you checked out Bill Simmons stuff?
No, I don't think I have.
He's a sports guy. He's actually a whole in that Jimmy Kimmel, Adam Carolla family too. So he's a very similar
Okay.
kind of guy. And he has a
Okay.
lot of shows. He has like a show called Rewatchables where they go over an old movie like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And
Ooh,
one,
that sounds good.
yeah, yeah. And he has a thing he calls half-ass internet research,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of what I'll do on this show. And so yeah, I've always remember like, oh yeah, your brother Rocky. And did he get you into this ultra stuff, or did you guys kind of do it at the same time, or?
Well, what happened was that Rocky, like when he was the first one to do a marathon, and I was like, wow, like if he could do a marathon, I could do a marathon. Then I did LA Marathon. And then eventually, I think I was dating my wife, and I asked her to drop me off for the Orange County Marathon. And I went and ran the Orange County Marathon. And then after the marathon, I wasn't tired,
Mm-hmm.
asked what our friends doing, and uh, they're playing soccer. So I went and played 2 games of soccer after running the Orange County Marathon. And then I said, you know what? I'm not fast, but I still have more fuel left in the tank. It'd be really interesting if I started doing something farther, because I think I could have just kept on going. And so
Yeah.
that's when I first did like my first like research and ultras, and then I did like an unorganized race that I put on myself, and I did a 50 miler from Yorba Linda down to like Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
And so that was my first 50. Then my brother was like, oh, you did 50? I could do 50. So he
Mm-hmm.
went out and did the Catalina 50, which is obviously a lot harder
Yeah.
than, than running 50 down to Pendleton and going down PCH. Then that's when I went for no, and then he went and did the 100, the EC 100, and then he got third place two
Yeah.
years in a row doing the EC 100.
So what year and how old were you? Kind of when did you first run that first marathon? Like in 2014 or 13 or something like that?
I think it was like 2004
Oh,
ish.
so okay, wait, oh wait, yeah, okay. I just know
Yeah,
like looking on Ultra Sign Up that you kind of jumped into the ultras. Your first one was
right,
2015.
right, right. I'm
So,
my battery's running low, so I'm
oh,
grabbing the charger
oh, so
before I run out.
how old were you then in 2004? I could do the math, but
Well, I am 37 right now. I'm born in November, and so let's see.
16 years ago, so you were like 2021 then, I guess, huh? Somewhere around there.
That sounds right.
Yeah, just trying
Yeah,
to.
I was just thinking about that, because I was, well, what if Andy asked me to do it earlier? Because I think I went to Vegas for the first time, like in relation to the LA Marathon. Like, was it before or after? I can't remember. So
But something like 2004, 2005 is when you did that,
yes,
and and your brother, is he younger or older than you?
Rocky is older.
Okay, I figured he was, but I know you well, and Rocky's always flying around so fast that I never. Well, the endurance challenge, I might see him at the start and never see him again because he's finishing in under 24 hours. And so I could like if you put an array of people up, I'd be like, I'm not sure which one he is. I know you, so um, so
Yeah,
so yeah,
he
so
did 22:40, I think, for EC 100.
mhm,
And then he did like 22:44 or something the
yeah.
next year.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
that's and so what did you do what were you doing marathons at that back then? Kind of what was your pace?
So I have never PR'd a marathon yet. So since that was my first marathon and I did it in 5:03.
Okay.
And it was like 104 degrees that day. So
I
which I thought,
I was at that
yeah.
one. Yep, we
Oh
started.
yeah?
I think we started at, well, LA is notorious for it's in March, but sometimes it's really damn hot. I remember one year
Yeah.
where it started at the Coliseum in early years, and it was like 90 before the start. And I got to mile 16 and got on the sag wagon and went home. I just bailed because it was so hot. And then my friend, who is like a 17-minute 5K and should have been like close to 3 hours, he refused to quit. And we sat there at the finish line for hours going, okay, 3 hours he's down here, 4 hours, 5 hours. It took like 5 hours and 45 minutes. And he's like 5'11", 150 pound. Now his PR now is like 253, but he just refused to quit. So it's interesting. I was going to say one of the things that's kind of funny is you said that you ran your first unofficial 50 miler in around 2004, 2005, right? Is that what you were saying kind of?
So something like that. So
Yeah.
it would be just before the 100. It would
Yeah.
whenever was my first 100. Yeah. I'd have to look at Ultra Sign Up.
Oh, well,
So
I think you're off by
oh
10
no,
years then.
my first marathon was 2004.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my first ultra was just the year before
Oh, okay.
my 100.
2014. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
2014, 2013. Oh, okay. So you took a few. That's because I was thinking for a minute, I thought, wow, if you did a 50 miler in 2004, you kicked my ass in terms I didn't do them back then. I was saying, I was almost like, wow, you're way ahead of me if you did it back in 2004. I ran marathons in high school and college and was get under 3 hours. And then I did a 50K in college. And then I took, 30 plus years off of running anything longer than a marathon. And I too, my first 50 miler was kind of like you in that I looked at the cutoffs at all the races and I was even bigger then. And I was like, I can't make the cutoffs. So I actually did my first 50 miler at the Relay for Life here in Bakersfield.
Oh, that's a good strategy
Yeah.
where
And so I,
you're
and
not
so
chasing the clock.
Yeah, and so I kind of did what you did. You made up your own little race, but yours was much more enjoyable than mine. I was going around this grass field for 20 hours. And what sucks here in Bakersfield is it's Relay for Life, and it's a huge event for 24 hours. And in theory, you're supposed to have a team person out there the whole time. Well, at 2 a.m, there's like 10 teams and me. And
Wow.
we have like a couple hundred teams, and so no one follows the rules anymore. So, and in fact, my only until that 50 miler, my only 50K, there used to be one called the Royal Bricker, and we ran from Oceanside to La Jolla, and that was a pretty cool race.
Wow.
Kind of similar to kind of what you did, where you run along the
Yeah.
coast. And I'd
Yeah.
much rather be there myself. So yeah, so it comes down. So like I said, I'm looking here, and whenever you got to take off, definitely say, hey, I got a heart out
Oh,
here, got
oh
family.
no, no. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
So I'm looking here and it says, so Beyond Limits seems to be your first official one on, well, no, yeah,
On Ultra?
an
Yeah.
ultra sign up. And so that was kind of your first official one.
Yeah, that was my first official one. It was Beyond Limits. I tried doing 100, but
Yeah.
then I ended up not making it. Yeah. And so then Ken gave me credit for the 24. He's like, oh, he didn't want me going home empty-handed. I
Yeah.
think he's like, as I'm throwing up and falling apart, it's like
Well,
it's like the sympathy the sympathy trophy, the sympathy
yeah.
card. I'm like,
Well,
okay. Yeah.
and despite having such a terrible thing, 80 miles in 24 hours isn't bad. That's a good mark. I mean, like I've gone to, Blue is my first 24 hour, and that was years ago when I was a lot younger, and I got to like 93 miles, and then I got cocky the following year. I thought, I'm going to get 100, and I went out there and just fell apart and got like 88. But now, if I get to
Mhm.
80, I'm pretty lucky to get to 80 because that's 30-hour pace basically. And then the only problem is when you
Yeah.
do when you do these loop races where they'll say, well, if you get to 80 in 24 hours, you'll get another whatever to get to the 100. And you always go, I always like look at the math like a nanny goat and go, yeah, but the problem is I got to do another 6 or 8 hours by myself. And so it's not much of a reward to barely get to whatever the cutoff is and then have to go out
Right,
like nanny
right,
goat.
right.
And then at nanny goat, you're out there from 7 to 1 walking around by yourself and getting hot. And so I kind of don't
Yeah,
like that option. That's why I kind of do timed events. And so it looks like, yeah, you went there. And then, of course, it's the race that I remember fondly, the Endurance Challenge 100-miler was your
yes, and
first.
that was my first one. Yeah, and I barely made it in within like a minute of the time cut off.
They got you at
Yeah,
they got you at 31:58.
yeah, I think it was, and then it was, but like my clock, my clock, I made it within like 40 seconds or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, it was like, it was crazy because everything, there's so many things I was instrumental. I was still like, to date, that was my uh favorite finish, my favorite everything, because like there was no more room for anything to go wrong. And every pick me up, every second, third, 25th wind that I had caught had to have happened, because it's like it all to when you finish within seconds, you're like, there was no more margin for error. Like
Yeah.
it was like that was it. Yeah.
Well, I remember rooting for you, and I remember that was like probably I think the last one I did, and it was also my worst race there. I was a little over 30 hours, but I just was a mess in that race. I went to that race, and like this photo behind me is
Yeah.
when I went like 26, 27 hours, and I had this awesome crew and everything. Well, 2015 I really wasn't interested in doing it. And me and Ed were kind of training people to do it. And I didn't want to ask anybody to help me. So I ended up just having my friend Joel, who, I've helped him do bad water.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't a bad water, but Joel, type 1 diabetic. But what we did was he crewed and paced me by himself. So the first 50 miles, he just drove along in the car and met me like you usually do. But then the last 50 miles, he got someone to give him a ride and he dropped the car off the finish line. And then me and him did the last 50 miles um, where we just did it together and we used fast food places and markets for our aid station. So I'd be like, okay, go up there and get me a Diet Dr. Pepper and a cookie. And he would run into the AMPMs.
That's
And
awesome.
but the problem is at mile 75, he kind of fell apart and I ended up dropping him. But long story short, that's the race and it's always blurred in. So that's the race. So that day, how did it start out? Because I don't know what happened at the beginning because we ended up meeting in the middle. So
Right, right.
did you
So,
go off like blazing?
I think, yeah, I think I went off too quick, which is like, has got me many, many times. I've gotten better at not like shooting off, like just
Yeah.
taking off. But I was going too fast, and then I stopped. I caught up to Ed and his group, and I
Mm-hmm.
was with them. And then one of the girls started already falling apart. It was like at the Carl's Jr. on
Yeah.
off of the river trail, which
Yeah.
is no longer there. FYI. So if you're doing any training for in the future races, it's not there no more.
Hmm.
But one of the girls was having like a meltdown and falling apart. And I'm like, man, I am feeling good right now. You do not stop when you feel good. So I
Yeah.
knew at that point, as much as I enjoy being around people, because it definitely helps. I know you talk
Yes.
about it all the time, and you've told me a few times like how important it is just to have those conversations and just being around people. It does help. But I knew I had to just move on. So I took off. And I think eventually, like I was so hot, like body temperature wise, from the river trail, and then getting on the boardwalk on PCH, my body temperature started dropping too fast.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
noticed that when my muscles started tightening, and that's when I started to fall apart, because it was like I went from being one extreme to that nice cold
Oh
ocean
yeah.
air. It feels good initially because you're
Mm-hmm.
really super hot on the river trail, but then all of a sudden I'm like, what's wrong with my my legs, why am I freezing up? And then I think I made it all the way through almost the end of the boardwalk in Huntington. And I was like, my wife was like using her knees like on
Yeah.
my butt, trying to,
That's why I was going to go to that, and how like
yeah,
I roll. I was going to let my say my part, and then we'll roll up to that when we met.
yeah.
So
And then that's when I think, because of my position when I was laying, I could see you coming in the
yeah,
distance and I could hear your voice. And I was like, is that Andy? Is that Andy? I'm like, just get me up. If I get up and I could get up with Andy, like Andy will give me a second wind. Like
yeah,
I'm like, I get do whatever you gotta do. Just get me up, get me up, get me up. I gotta
yeah,
get up with Andy. And it was like you totally gave me another wind, and I got up and I started moving.
yeah.
But yeah.
What I was going to say though, so yeah, that was my first 100-mile race. You go from Corona, which is inland, all the way to Santa Monica. The bad part about the race is the first 30 miles is on this bike path. It's a nice bike path, but it's warm. You got that concrete reflecting the light off, just like snow hitting you. Snow, you get almost blind. And so I know you guys were just kind of cruising along. They use Jack in the Boxes often as the aid station. So like mile 25, there's a Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
I always have a sausage croissant there. And so I was just kind of minding my own business, not having a particularly good race. And I remember, yeah, getting that Carl's Jr. And I think I had Joel buy me like a shake and stuff. And so, yeah, so you're in that area, and then you hit Huntington Beach, and I always hit Huntington Beach, in the evening. It's cool, it's breezy. There's always like a volleyball tournament going on that time of year. So you're like going through all the people, and it's gorgeous. And then, yeah, so I remember just running along, and it's getting dark. And then I'm finally getting towards the end. And the problem is I hadn't seen Joel forever, because that was when he left to go drop the car off. So I'd been going for like 10 plus, I've been going from a long time, 10, 15 miles without really any aid. And so when I rolled up on you, I just the way you said it, you were like laying on one of those benches with your crew and family and your wife. And then you just like, oh my gosh, it's Andy, I gotta go. And you're telling your wife, I gotta get up, let's go. And I was really glad, because me and Ed talk about this all the time. It's much better to like help other people or be with people, because then it takes the focus off of how bad you feel, like more like, okay, I'm out here with him now. And so it was
Yes.
great to hook up with you guys. And I remember getting to, because it's like the longest pull, and I think when you get to that next parking lot, there is a Jack in the Box there. And I remember
Yes.
finally
Yes.
getting Joel
Yeah.
finally gave me some
Sunset
food.
Beach.
Yeah. And then the thing was cool was you guys, your wife was there, and you guys had like tons of stuff in your
Oh
van. I
yeah.
just remember like rating it, like, hey, do you want this? Yes. Scrapes. Like, yes, I'll take all this. I was like, I'll take anything you'll give me. And then
Yeah.
if I remember right, we stuck together. You had a couple people with you. I remember.
Yes.
How many people, who
Yeah.
was with you that day?
I had a couple kids from church that were with
That's
me.
what
I
it
had
was.
a couple seniors, and then they couldn't stop talking about you and Joel for like weeks afterwards. And they're like, oh my goodness, this guy has a story about everything.
Well, yeah,
Like,
and so it was so funny, and I think that was the race. So we were kind of going back and forth, because that's one thing I feel bad is that I always just got to keep moving. So like when people like yourself who are younger and faster than me, especially, you'll stop for something, I'll just keep moving, and then I hope you'll run up and catch me, but I really can't wait around for you, because
right,
I've got like 1 gear. Like
right.
you can throw down an 8-9 minute mile. 8-9 minute mile, I can throw down a 12. So, but I remember we had to go to the bathroom really bad, and we were on the Long Beach part, and me and Joel made a mistake because we couldn't pee on the sand because there was too many people around. We went into one of those public restrooms right
Yeah.
there as soon as we got onto the beach, and we walked in there, and there was at least 20 dudes in there. It was like you were at a nightclub
Yes.
in the nightclub
Yeah.
in the movie Seven. And people doing who knows what and drugs. And I remember we walked in with like our little red lights on, which made it even more seedier. And I remember just going, this is such a bad idea. And then coming
Yeah.
out, but then somehow or another, I remember my memory, we were with you guys, and I remember hitting Long Beach, and I remember you having that crew of kids, and I had Joel.
Yeah.
And then do you remember the cops rolled up on us?
Oh yeah. Because there was a car accident,
Oh, is
and
that what it is?
it was like they were blocking off the streets and closing down. Like there's like a big, and then I remember looking at you, and you're like, just look forward and keep on going. And like we did it we did a stop. I'm like, sounds good. Let's
Well,
go.
no,
Let's go.
no. What's funny
Yeah.
is I don't remember the car accident part. I just remember moving along relentless forward motion, and I remember the cops rolling up on us on bicycles and started talking to us and our crew.
Oh yeah, that was the second one. That happened more than once. So we had
Oh,
the
okay,
cops
yeah,
on
yeah.
the
The car crash
bicycle.
was where we had to go to different. No, but I was still with you, and we're with these guys. We're with them, and the cops are like, kind of like wanted us to stop, and they were more curious than anything. But it was 11 o'clock at night or whatever. But I remember saying to you, I was like, we're not stopping because the worst thing that could happen is they arrest us, and then we don't have to keep doing this race.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
And so
I told,
so it was funny. We walked away from the police. So like your pace
yeah.
and Joel stopped and talked to the cops, and we just kept walking down the street. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, what am I going to do if they go, hey, you guys get over here? I'm like going, sir, I'm in a 100-mile race. I got to get to Santa Monica by whatever time. So I just remember that was just so funny. I remember just specifically saying to you, because we were both kind of hurting, and there we're only at like mile 50 something, but we're heading into the
Yeah.
hell.
Right.
And I remember
Right.
going, the worst thing would be is if we got arrested, then we could just quit doing this stupid race. Like I said, that race was bad for me. And then so I remember, when you leave, you go through Long Beach and it's crazy with all the city lights and everything. And then you start
Yes.
that god awful.
Downtown Long Beach was where we saw the second cops. That was a car accident, and that's when they're
Okay.
trying to reroute us or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah,
and that's when you.
I don't remember
Yeah.
where I ended up leaving you, but I mean, you get in that area and then you're along the river with all the homeless, and then you end up going through that San Pedro and Wilmington area. It's just so horrible, that whole section. And always going through it like a 1 or 2 in the morning, the bad area. And that must have
Yeah.
been because I don't think you got to 100K with me. I don't remember.
No, I mean we were close. I think it was just before the bridge going into Wilmington where we separated, and I it was that time of the day of the race, and I
Oh yeah.
needed to stop and do my business. it, one of the kids were like trying to let the guy from Denny's to let me in and use a restroom, and just being a high schooler, he's like, this guy's gonna poop his pants. Like, you need to let you need to let him in. It's the guy was nice enough to let me go into the Denny's and use the restroom because he was like for customers only, and it was a security guard, almost like a bouncer for
Yeah.
Denny's. I was like,
Well, and
okay,
like I said, those neighborhoods are just oof. It's really funny when you're running through, I guess, San Pedro, and I did the race a number of times, and I the first year it startled me, but the net following years, whoever had crew pacing me, I'd go 10, 9, or 5, 6, I mean 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There was a dog at some tow truck place that would scream and jump on the cage, and it scared everybody every year for like 4 years in a row. I knew that dog was there, and every year that damn dog would come. And then so yeah, you get to 100K and it's at the Jack in the Box. And up until then, Joel was feeling good, and so he was actually running into like the 7-Elevens and supplying me. But then what happened is when we got into Palos Verdes and the rolling hills, he just got sleepy and stuff. And so when we got to 75, I left him because technically the sun was almost up, so I didn't have to have a pacer. So I dropped him at 75, and then he just crewed me the rest of the way. And in that race, I mean, I had a rough race, but my goal was to try and catch Ed and the ladies. And I ended up catching a couple of them with a mile to go. But so what happened? So you ended up you got to 100K. How were you doing there at 100K? What was going on? I kind of like what happened through that race.
where on the course is 100K? Like
It
so.
it's like through all that bad area, like Wilmington, San Pedro. You go through
So
San Pedro.
Wilmington,
Yeah, you go.
yeah.
It's before Wilmington.
So
You go over that big bridge. So after you went to Denny's.
yeah, yes. Okay. So after Denny's, I think that's when I started getting sleepy, and I felt like I could barely keep my eyes open. So my buddy had his big Suburban, and I laid down in the Suburban probably like for 20 minutes. I had
Mm-hmm.
my eyes closed, but I could still hear everything. I could hear my
Yeah,
friends saying like, "Wouldn't it be funny if we just drove them further and and drove
yeah.
dropped them off?" I'm like, "Not funny, guys." Like, then I remember getting up like after 20 minutes, like kind of like what you're talking when we're talking about sleep strategy. Like I got up because I wasn't fully falling asleep, but I
Yeah.
think me having my eyes closed did help a bit.
Yeah,
Like
it
it
does
kind of,
help. Yeah.
yeah, even though I wasn't like dead asleep, but just having my eyes being able to rest did help me somewhat. But I remember getting so lightheaded that like my eyes like blacked out.
Hmm.
And so like, and that kind of freaked me out. Like, so I go to get out from the sleep, and then my eyes are open. Then all of a sudden, my eyes like just like shut on me. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I
That's
that
a blood
close?
pressure thing. That's a blood pressure thing
Yeah.
because I'm now on blood pressure medicine, and I'll
Uh,
get the blackout kind of vision disappearing when, yeah.
yeah.
And so probably laying down, but see that 15, 20 minutes, like I said, and that's kind of my rule is the 15, 20 minutes is great and it does you some good, but don't, if you're not falling asleep within 15, 20 minutes, get up because there's no sense laying there for another hour. Yeah, the 15,
Yeah.
20 off your feet. So yeah, so you got up, you're dizzy, lightheaded, vision kind of disappearing on you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so started getting some calories, started getting some food back in me. My crew switched, so I had a group of friends switch, and a new car showed up, and then I had a different group of friends for the remainder of uh, the race. And my next group of friends showed up. My buddy had like a microwave and a toaster oven
Wow.
set up in his car, like he was ready, and he's like, "I can make you hot pancakes." And I was like, okay, you know, and then having like a hot pancake, I was like, this is kind of magical. This is like, this is pretty cool. So, and
Nice.
he's like, you want more? And I was like, sure. And then he made some like cookies for me, and he like doubled the sugar and everything. He's like, would you want some of these special cookies I made for you with double sugar? I was like, okay. And he's out, let me put it in the toaster oven first. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, you know,
And
hot cookies.
and now
Yeah.
when you're now you're in the 60, 70 mile range, how did your legs and stuff feel being your first kind of attempt? Was the body okay, or were you really having issues walking or running then?
I I think it was mostly like stomach issues. I think
Hmm.
that's always been
Yeah.
my thing is like going on, like I don't know if it's the acidity level and things like that was going on with my stomach. So it was after the EC100, like I was like, okay, no more Tylenol, no more Advil. If I don't do like a rub on or a topical, like it's not gonna happen. Like
Yeah.
it's just, like it's there's already enough stuff going on with our stomach. Like I don't need to have like a Tylenol to help me
Oh yeah.
to make things even worse. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I learned that. So no more of that. And then just my muscles were just so tight, like at the mile 70 or 80, and I think it was 80 something. After that's the last checkpoint, right?
Yeah. Well, you go into the big thing by the church that's mile 75 and you're in Palos Verdes.
Yes, so I passed the church. I'm still moving slow, and I think just at the end of Palos Verdes when we're going
Yeah.
down the hill.
Yeah. To
Um,
Redondo Beach. Yeah.
yeah, so I sat down. My buddy made me like cup of noodles, and it was good. And then I noticed like my battery started dying on me. I like on my phone. I had the live tracker like on me, so they were constantly tracking me. Like my watch, I was just started doing the math, like how much time do I have? In my
Yeah.
head, I was thinking what I needed is another good sleep and I'll be fine. So I was trying to factor in, do I have enough time to take another nap? And after doing the math, I realized not only do I not have enough time for another nap,
Yeah.
I don't even have time to walk. I need
Hmm.
to run. And so that's when I'd fallen so far behind that not I began to probably run out of fear.
Yeah.
And so, so you're that fear that I'm not going to finish, you
Yeah.
know. And so I began to start slowly picking up the pace. And by the time I was getting into Santa Monica, my battery and everything had completely died at that point. So there's space. There's daisies.
Hey, yeah. So yeah, I mean, so you were able to actually like because mile 75, you must have barely made that cutoff the church.
Yes.
And then it's like rolling down hills. See, that's where I kind of found it. What happened was when we got on those rolling hills, that's when I finally started to feel good for the first time in the race. And I got to the aid station because I dragged Joel like 3 or 4 miles into that aid station, told him to go to sleep and find a ride or whatever. And that's when I got in there, Ed was actually just leaving. He sent the women out. He actually, because he's notorious for sleeping, he actually slept at that aid station. So he left just before I got there, right when I chased him out of it. And so I chased them because I really wanted to try and catch them all. And I chased them all through Palos Verdes down to Redondo Beach. The problem is I got to the beach and then they all left me. But then eventually I caught him at the end of the race. But yeah, that's great that you were able. So you hit the beach and now it's daytime and you were able to actually run and you had to run all the way in, huh? So, and you got it.
Yes. Barely made it in. It was, I mean, everything had to start going right, and it did.
Yeah.
And so I was really, really
And,
happy.
and also the thing is, I tell people all the time, and of course this was your first. I mean, you did do the 24, but it's like, once that sun comes up, you perk up, and especially in that race because you're running
Yeah.
along. They're on the boardwalk. In fact, I remember that year, it was so crazy. Joel again couldn't get to me because it was crowded, and then we ran through like a 5K, and then later on the beach there was a triathlon going on. So I'm like going through the triathletes to get to the stupid Marina Del Rey dock, and that's thankfully when I caught Maureen, who's a really experienced out runner, did ultras back in the 80s, and she was having a terrible time too. But thankfully, her friend was with her, and we just walked it in the last. But then what was great was, like I said, we we got to the boardwalk and Joel was with me and he's like, hey, those ladies aren't that far in front of you. There was like 3 or 4 of them, and with like less than a mile to go I caught them, which they weren't too happy that I caught them, I think, because they thought, oh, we're in front of Andy. But it was like yeah, it ended up I was 308 and then the other one was 308 and a couple of them yeah, because we had a couple gals ran really great. There's Gabby Prost. She did 27:33, and Krista McCarthy did really good. She was another one that was with Ed. She did like 26 hours
Yes.
that year. And
Yeah, they did
yeah,
great.
yeah, they took off. And so yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of like the problem you had was when you were with them way back there, Carl's Jr. You didn't stick with them, which probably. But it sounds like definitely one of the things that I found with people, and that's why I like doing these podcasts and listening to how things went with you, is the stomach issues are often an issue with people. And one of the things I tell people is that's a function of pacing and not pacing properly. So the thing is, when you go out fast and hard, which is so easy on that race because you're on that bike path,
Yes.
you go fast and hard. You've only got a couple hours of glycogen, the muscle, which you can power yourself. So when you're going fast, you're not fat burning, you're blowing through your glycogen. Then you bonk, but the problem is, since you went out fast, all the blood has just left your stomach and said, okay, we're closed for today. So then when you bonk and you run out of energy, we throw food in you and your body goes, hey, we're closed today. And then you get all the nausea, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually that goes away. And I often tell people, then you just start sipping water and going slower. And guess what? You can move. You can't run fast anymore because you don't have that glycogen. You don't have the sugar to burn, but you can keep moving. And it's kind of what happened with you. But also what happened with you,
Mm,
what happened with you is something I see often happen where you said, it's pretty hot and sunny, and then you get to the beach and then the temperature drop. And that also because the exertion. And it's always like, especially when you do multi-day races, you've got to prepare for the night way in advance. Like, you got to bundle up, get clothed, and
yeah.
so you don't lose that body temperature. Because once you do, you're a goner. And then also the problem too is, especially when you're going to be in a long race, is you have to, save some energy during the day, not just physical but mental energy, so you can move at night to stay warm. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a great story because, like I said, you did finish that thing, and it was definitely right at the cusp of cutoffs. And so, were the other times you've done the 100 a little simpler, or I guess last year you did the Beyond Limits and kind of had the same thing, kind of
Yeah, I wasn't doing super great at Beyond Limits, probably for multiple reasons. Some of them were good because I was just having too much fun and
mhm.
getting distracted,
Yeah.
which which is easy to do when
Yep.
so I was doing the 72s prior, I think the 2 years prior to the 100.
Yeah.
So I did 272,
Yep.
and I was probably moving more at 72-hour pace and not 100-mile,
Hmm.
the 32-hour pace. And so, and I was just having a good time and talking with people. And then I think then I waited too long to start picking up the pace, and then I was then rushing at the end to try to get it in. And
Nice.
but
Yeah.
that
But you,
was that was it, it worked out. It worked out, but it
yep.
was like I was throwing up at the end, and then Tracy and Sally came over. She was really concerned because I started yakking up a whole lot at the end. It's like
Yikes.
my body knew you're done. Okay, then you don't need anything else in your stomach, so let's get rid of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And so obviously right now you're probably not really, you don't have any races because there aren't any races. Or are you planning on, are you, I hear they're still, I haven't seen them cancel Blue. Myself, I'm not going to probably go if they do have it. Are
I
you signed
wanted
up
to
for it?
do it.
Huh? What's
I
that?
wanted to do blue. I wanted to do blue, but then they ended up closing the registration, and so I don't know if he's only taking like half of the signups, because if
Uh-huh.
you went on to Ultra Sign Up, you can see like the red mark that actually shows like how full the sign up is, and
Yeah.
they all show that they're only half full. So
Hmm.
I'm assuming that's it. And I was, because of work, I always wait till the last minute
Yeah.
usually to sign up for races, because I don't know how much time I have for that I'll have accumulated for work, or how much money.
Yeah.
Um, so I like the 72, but then I was like, okay, maybe I'll do the 48. But then I went to go look up, and then it's all closed, so I can't even sign up for that. So I sent Lee an email saying like, hey, can you reach out to Ken for me? And I really want to do the race if it's still going to happen. Or so
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Is there
Yeah.
any, because for myself, one of my personal goals was to do at least 100 a year. So now I'm starting to think like, can I even get 100 in before the year? Like, what
Yeah.
races geographically are within our area that that I can get to on a
Yeah.
weekend, go run it, and still make it back to work by Monday or whatever. So
Yeah.
Bountiful, I don't know. Is that going to happen?
Well, so I was going to say, talk about Beyond Limits. That was my first 24-hour race, and found out like, hey, I can actually move and do stuff if I'm not fighting cutoffs or fearing tripping and falling. But and so I'm a legacy there. I've done it every year, but I always kind of sign up a month or two before it because I don't really like to sign up things early because I never know how I'm going to feel. And so when they
Right.
moved it to the fall, I kind of had it as an option, but I looked at it realistically, like the way it's set up with the bunkhouses and the cafeteria and all that. But it does look like, and I didn't notice, it does look like they're taking maybe half the people in the race, and so I hope they're going to have it. Um, uh, so I would be missing it this year. I've done I've done some podcasts with Ed, and I did one with Greg Simmons, who I met across years, and he has a race that's on this weekend, September 19th, the same as Blue. Of course, he was there originally, and then everybody in the spring moved their races. Like the Griffith Park moved there, and Nanny Goat moved onto his weekend. Now Griffith Park and Nanny Goat have been canceled, obviously, and so he has a race. It's up near Auburn area, so it's a bit of a
Okay.
travel. It's a bit of a travel
Yeah.
for you, but a ride to walk. It's kind of similar to Blue in that it's at a horse ranch. They take on kids and therapy type horse riding. So it's like a less than a mile loop at this ranch, sort of similar situation, private property. He is right now saying he's going to still be able to have the race. He has a 24, but he also has where you can do, I'm going to pull it up here, ride to walk endurance runs. And I put a link in the show notes, but I can also just send you the link. But he has 100 version where he gives you 32 hours to do 100 miles.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's in Lincoln, so it's kind of, up there by kind of the western states. So it is a bit of a but so that's going to be on the 19th, and I signed up for it after I did the podcast with him, and I was like, well, I'm a legacy at Blue, and I'm thinking I'm going to go to Blue. But after talking to him and hearing about his race, and I thought, you know what, I haven't done a race in a while. I think I'm just going to go to his. And so I didn't even tell him. I just signed up for it, and then surprised him and said, hey, I signed up for your race. So, and
That's awesome.
I have a code for, like, if you use Noise 10, you save 10% on the race. But yeah, it's a 32 hour. He also does have a version, but he only gives you the 32 hours that you could run the 100 around your neighborhood, and then he'll send you a buckle. So he has a virtual race, but he's not going to give you you don't necessarily have to do it on that weekend. You could do it anytime during that week, but you need to do it in 32 hours. He's not going to give you the whole week to do the 100. So I just sent you the link through Facebook. You might check that out. It's a bit of more of a drive. The price is pretty reasonable for the race, and it's a noon start. So you could almost in theory drive up there the day of it. And so might check that out. I'm going to definitely do the 12. I'm going to do the midnight 12 hour. So I'm going to do the last 12 hours of the 24. Ed may be there. He's talking about maybe he's going to do Blue, maybe he's not going to do Blue. He's not really sure what's going on, but so that is right now in up there in Northern California where they're at. It's kind of more rural area. So like he works at a casino, and they actually reopened the casino up there by where he is. So, and they're not having any real cases. He said, like, our county had like 5 COVID cases, and it's a pretty wide, it's a wide 6-foot path. Of course, with this whole COVID, if you're outdoors, there's the likelihood of transmission is like next to nothing. It's more like if you're in enclosed places. And that's kind of why with Blue, with the bunkhouses, and there's nowhere to sleep there. I mean, like, you can't, unless everybody's at camp. So that's kind of the whole idea behind that. So who knows?
The problem with Blue, and like even pitching a tent, is that it can drop down to 20 degrees at Blue. That's where it would make it difficult, even if you decided. I know people do it. People camp there every year. Yeah. But I would have to really do some planning and make sure I borrowed like a low temperature tent or whatever. And it would definitely be some work. But
so you might look at this race. I mean, it's a pretty long drive for you. I mean, I would love to go to Blue, but I was just kind of looking at it, and also my conditioning and shape. I'm not really ready to tackle like the 48 or something. Last year, like Ed had a bad 2019. I've had kind of a bad 2019 in terms of, like, I went to Blue, and about halfway through the race, I was having some issues, and my wife needed me to come home sort of too for something. And so halfway through the race, I was like at 70, 80 miles. I just packed up, went home, and I needed to go home. And then I went to some other races and kind of hit or miss. It's kind of like, this just isn't fun. And so hopefully this 12 will go. So I don't really want to like go for a big experiment and do like 48. Now, see, like last year I signed up for the 72, and you said, oh, I like 72 hours. I hate 72-hour races. And the reason I don't like them is the same reason I don't like 24-hour races. 24, I'm never going to get to 100 because I just don't run enough. And so there's kind of like, what's the point of a 24-hour race? Oh, I got to 80 to 90 miles. It's like, oh, I went to college and I dropped out with a semester to go. It's like, and it took me like half a dozen or more to realize that. 48's nice because in a 48, you can get to 100, and then you can look at the leaderboard and see you can chase people down, because in a 24, the guys don't really need to sleep. And so the fast guys, I'm never going to catch them. In a 48, they got to go to sleep, and there's a sweet spot. Like I won Blue one year in 2016 and beat some fast guys. But then the problem in the 72 is they can sleep, come back out, and run fast. And so I can't beat them in a 72. And then the problem, same thing with like the 24, is in a 72, there's so much pressure on you to get that 200 miles. And
Yes.
I've seen so many people at like across years go for that and have a horrible hard time. And I know with me, my margin of room for error is tiny, tiny. I mean, like my PR in a 48 is only 138. So you start doing the math of like, so you basically just go out and do another 65-mile day. And so I don't think 72 would be like, God, it would suck to get to like 188 miles, 190 miles and be like, oh
Well,
man.
I know. Well, my first time at Blue was that when I didn't make the 100 mile, I was at 95. So I was just past the cabins, and I was like circling back through the forest on my way back, and that's when I just started like throwing up and got lightheaded, and that was the
Mhm.
end of my race. And like now with everything I've learned, I would have been like, just throw up, you'll feel better, and keep on going.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is I've never I always feel like I've never thrown up in a race, and I see
Uh,
people throwing up and I'm thinking I just don't know how they do it. But like Scott Jurek, who won Western States 7 times, he had a saying about throwing up. He says throwing up in ultras is like grass stains in little league. It's just something you do, and you
yeah.
throw up, and it's like you reboot. And I've seen so many people they throw up, and but for me, throwing up hurts so bad. I mean, I go decades without throwing up. I remember Jerry Seinfeld did a whole bit on it, like how he hates to throw up too. When I throw up, it just physically hurts so bad that I'll do almost anything not to throw up. But yeah, I mean, and then I've known people like Jimmy Dean Freeman of the SoCal Coyotes. He's a ultra coach up in LA area and pretty well known. You can be talking to him at a race and you'll go, just a second, and go, whoa, and then be right back to normal. You're like, how did you do that? Like how I can sneeze, he can puke. So it
I
does
wish
it.
it was easy for me, because there's been many a times like I wish I could
Yeah.
throw up, because I knew, but it's like I can't make myself throw up. I'm
Hmm.
like, if I could,
Yeah.
then I would do it, and then I would probably, because I know, like, okay, if I just threw up, like even when I did Kara's thing, I did Saddle to Surf, I just did the 50,
Yeah, I saw that.
and
Yeah.
I my stomach was like just horrible, but I didn't like throw up until like mile 40 something,
Mm.
and I needed to throw up at mile 30
Yeah.
ish, like
Yeah.
way, way late, like
Yeah. Oh, I
so.
mean, I know that feeling. I was at Mount Whitney one time trying to summit, and I went out on my own because I'd gone the year or two before, and we hadn't made it. And I got altitude sick, which I've never had before. And coming down, I was walking with this dad and kid, and the kid was just as miserable feeling as me. But then I remember when we got to like Outpost Camp, which is like 5, 6 miles from the getting down, he was on his hands and knees puking, and I was like, I wish I could throw up. I'd feel so much better. I was jealous of the kid. And you know what happened? He started throwing up. And then next thing I know, him and his dad just left my ass. And which I mean, it was fine. But yeah, he did definitely a reboot. So like I said, and so you got your streak going. You'll be 2 years. And what, you're going to just keep going for, or you got any goal or?
Well, I thought, like, could I get to 2000, and then maybe like at 2000, like I'll reassess and see if maybe I want to turn it into like a workout streak at that point. Like
Yeah.
maybe I'll give my legs some rest and just be, so, whatever physical activity, whether it's me doing weights and then running the next day or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So because I forget how many, Josh Holmes says like he has days of, like he has consecutive days of working out. It's not running,
Mm-hmm.
it's not always running, but he has, I want to say it's like 10,000 days of consecutively working out. Like if he's not running, he's doing something else.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought about that. Like maybe I'll switch it to that at that point. I just thought like 2000 sounds pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. We'll see. One of the things I've been fighting lately is planners. I'm pretty sure I got it, planners fasciitis. So
Oh yeah.
I thought the cure would be me getting these. I was looking and reading reviews. And typically, I'm an ultra guy, but like the Bondi 6 from Hoka's had some really good reviews in regards to plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
So I thought hey, I'll give them a spin, and they've been okay. Like, I think ultras are just better.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I probably after these bondies, I'll just go back to ultras. I always get the ultras in wide, even though I'm not a wide foot, but I just because you get used to the wide toe box
Yeah.
and in the with the ultras. So I mean, so when you get the Hokas, I'm like, it's not the same. I have to get the wide,
Yeah.
the wide one, and I don't know if that also like attributes like maybe because of me getting the wide and I don't have a wide foot, maybe it makes my heel shift more or
Yeah, your
something.
foot's sloshing around a little more. You might like
Yeah,
try and like what I do. I wear smart wool socks or a thicker sock, like wear a thicker sock so that your foot will stay in the shoe. But plantar fasciitis is one of those things like shin splints. You get it, you can kind of still keep going on it. You really can't like break your foot. I mean, you got to do a lot, but it is like my friend Allison had it for a while, and it just takes a while to get rid of it. It's just definitely one of those injuries that's not fun. Like, because if you get a knee thing, you just aren't running the knee eventually. But with a plantar, you're like, oh, I can still go out and do stuff. But yeah, it's
yeah.
you might try maybe just wearing a thicker sock because then maybe your foot won't be sloshing around so much
Mm.
in it and stuff like that. So sounds like a good plan. Just my first rule is always stay healthy. Stay healthy, be boring, not epic. And
Yes, I love
talk
that.
and talking about streaks myself, I basically walked off the baseball diamond my sophomore year in 1979, and I pretty much have not missed a day of walking or running or triathlon training since then. So 41 years, I pretty much, so whatever that is, 12,000, 40 times 300, I don't know, 120,000 days or something. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but I mean, it's like an addiction, but I guess a healthy one. So yeah, what's
Yeah.
41 times 365? I got my little computer.
Oh,
41 years times 365. 15,000 days, I guess is what
wow.
it is.
Wow.
So, yeah, but I mean, like all through the 2010 to 2020, I was averaging 100-mile weeks. Now, it took me 30 years to get to 100-mile weeks, but then I was doing like 5,000-mile years for a while. And then last year was the first year I only did like 3 or 4. I just kind of like backed off and started only doing 70, 80 miles. And this year I had a really bad fall, the first time I've ever really been injured. And I still went out and did like, a mile. It took me an hour.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so that's so I guess we'll kind of wrap up things. You got there. Unfortunately, don't really have any races. It'd be awesome to see you get up there to ride to walk, and you got 32 hours, so you could go
Yeah.
there. And Craig's a really good guy, but maybe with Blue, I haven't. I unfortunately didn't sign up, and I didn't watch it because sometimes if you watch it, they'll send you emails. So I haven't been getting updates. I did
Right.
talk to Ken, and he has a race, but it's only up to 12 hours in Vegas in like November, and I actually did
Mhm.
sign up for that one, but it's not a 100-mile version. So
Yeah. I'm not that fast.
no, no, yeah, yeah. I've
What about Bountiful? Have you ever done Bountiful? Do you think that's still going to happen?
Yeah.
Um, they're not on Ultra Sign Up, I don't think.
Oh yeah.
They're on the other one. What's
Run sign up or something or
yeah,
something.
yeah, I think Run Sign Up.
They have an advantage, kind of same thing with Beyond Limits, and also the one I'm going to ride to walk is that they're on private property, so then they don't have to deal with all the government city stuff as much. The
Yeah,
Bountiful is on you run around some kind of orchard. It's like some
yeah,
farm area, so that would be a possibility. It's near you, and it's like a 1 mile-ish loop, dirt, just
okay.
run. So that would be, and then of course, Born to Run has his. He's got a Luis Escobar guy out in Santa Barbara, is think still got his race possibly happening too, and that's
Okay.
on the ranch. He has like a looped race besides his Born to Run race. So yeah, I guess because Bonnefill's not on the, and they're good people. I'm blanking on their names right now, but Jean Ho, she's run
Mm,
endurance challenge many times. That's how I got to know her and Lambert. One of the
yeah,
people. So I might reach out.
I met them at Chimera or Chimera.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
yeah, I met them over there. I think they were doing the timing I think, over there or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
they have their negative split timing. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
they do the timing at Nanny Goat too, or have
yeah.
lately. Probably not when you did it, but the past few years they've been doing that.
Mm.
So hopefully you can get a race, or just keep training. And it's always good. I always tell people training is putting money in the bank, racing is taking out the money.
Yeah,
And so what you're doing now is going to set you up. And I often tell people like yourself, I started coaching in 2009 adults, moved from high school, and a lot of my runners were women. And I used to tell them, like, look, like right now you've got a job, a husband, and kids. Do half marathons, but be put off doing the really long stuff, or do it like you do, just infrequently. But the time and the training and being smart now will pay off when you can. Life's a little simpler, when you get in your 40s and you can go out and
yeah,
especially with ultra, as you've seen with ultras, you can be in your 40s and 50s and still do really well and improve. I mean, Ed actually
yeah,
in the article and I Run Far today about older athletes and stuff. So it's kind of like, work on your speed, put into training, like what you're doing. So like I said, I was really happy to see on your Instagram, you're 699, 700. And so you're at how many?
yeah.
So congratulations on doing that. A big
Thank you.
it's a big accomplishment just to go out every day. I mean, people talk a good game, like, I'm doing this or that. And then like one of the things I love and hate about Strava is you look at Strava and go, yeah, everyone, you got runner in your name and everybody, you think you're a runner, but Jesus, you're doing like 10, 15 miles a week and you're fast. So you're only running 2 hours a week because you're,
Yeah,
and we're like, so is that really a runner if you're doing 2 hours a week total, or,
yeah,
not going out every day? And so that's I think one thing I wanted to leave you with, one of the things we were talking about like your issues on staying awake and things. It's so
yes,
funny. I'm pretty good at staying awake. I've had some moments, but one of the things that's really funny is I used to play poker. I still play online, but it's all jacked up with the legalities. But I used to go to my local casino here and played full time. And then I kind of got out of doing it. And I went back a couple years ago, and some of the people were like, hey, I've seen you, you're running those 100-mile races and stuff. And it was funny because the poker guys were the first people that when I met them were more impressed that I did the 100 miles. Everyone else, civilians, goes, did you sleep? Right? Like they're more impressed that I stayed up for 24 or 30 hours than I covered 100 miles, which I was always like, the 100 miles is the hard part, people. This, staying awake is no big deal. I always say, didn't you go to college or party? Stay awake. And so,
right.
what was really funny is the poker people were the first people who were impressed with the distance, because poker guys stay up all night and play poker. Like I could roll in on,
Right.
I could roll in on a Friday evening, and I always would play to a certain time and go home. So I'd go home, come back Saturday afternoon. The same guys would be sitting at tables. They would pull 48-hour, 72-hour kind of stuff. In fact, I used to go to the Bicycle Casino in Los Angeles. They have 96-hour parking there. That's 4 days. And I know people, I've actually flown out and parked my car there, played poker, took the bus to the LAX, done a weekend somewhere, and came back because I knew my car would be completely safe and free to park at the bicycle. So
Wow.
so poker players are the only people I know that like don't think staying up. And you'll see like super old dudes. And what it is, so I often tell people, is it's also motivation. They're motivated. And you're not to say you're not motivated in your races, but it's like they're motivated to make money and or get the money back, and so they can stay awake. And so I often tell people, in your mind, you're culturally believe you need to sleep. And there is that witching hour, like at 3 or 4 in the morning, where your circadian rhythm and everything shuts down and you do get that groggy sleep. And that's when you take that 5-10 minute nap. And then of course, like you were saying, working on those issues with nutrition and taking medicines and stuff, and realizing like, oh yeah, that's not helping. Taking might alleviate the pain, but then it makes me puke. So it's definitely,
Right.
that's why we
Right.
love them. Like the great Ann Tracy, I kind of end up the podcast with her, the great Ann Tracy, who I got to know a lot now because she's out
At
walking,
Blue.
yeah,
Yeah.
blue and stuff. She always
So
says,
awesome.
that ultra running is all about problem solving. And it's definitely,
Yes, yes, yes. And being a handyman, and that's my
yes,
job. That's what I do. That's
yeah.
what I do. I'm just a
So,
problem solver.
yeah,
There's a solution. There's always a solution. We just got to figure out what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
Cool.
it's really great talking to you. And I'm glad that we got together. And I think I'll let you go. I'm sure your family's going, what's he doing?
Yeah.
And you take care. And like I said, if you do, you know, send me a note. I'll probably see it if you do sign up for something. So hopefully you can go off and
Yeah.
do another race. So, Okay, I'm gonna, but I always end my things like, first rule: stay healthy, be boring, not epic. And thanks a lot for coming on to the Anti Noise podcast. And we will see you soon, hopefully.